What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we've got Bungie's second TWID update of the year. Of course we had the first one last week, which was relatively light, apart from the Festival of the Lost Armor stuff, but this week certainly goes into a bit more detail, and a lot of the focus is on Heresy. So Bungie speak about the upcoming dungeon and the dungeon race. That dungeon will be called Sundered Doctrine, apparently, so we'll talk about that. Plus, they have ability updates for Heresy. That includes changes to a lot of subclasses, but also a new arc verb, 3 new aspects being added, and some additional changes. And on top of that, Bungie speak about the Bento event, or what they refer to as Past is Prologue, a series of quests that will be rolling out starting next week. So we'll go into a few more details about all of these things, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, but now let's get into it. And so first up, Sundered Doctrine is the name of the upcoming dungeon, which will drop as part of Heresy. This will land on February 7th, where we'll travel to Savathun's throne world, interestingly, to infiltrate Volk's pyramid ship in a new dungeon. So almost like Vesper's Host had DSC kind of vibes, or more than vibes, it was in the Deep Stone Crypt. Sundered Doctrine will take us back to more of the sort of Vow of Disciple themes, I guess. Give us your thoughts about that, but contest mode will be enabled for the first 48 hours, just like what we saw with Vesper's Host. And this time Bungie will select a single winner, the first team, to actually get it completed, and will need to be at 1995 power level to be at the cap through all of the encounters. Plus it will require the final shape dungeon key, and we'll need to pick up a new quest called the Drowning Labyrinth in order to enter the dungeon. And as always, members of the fire team must loot the final chest if a finish is to be recorded. So there we go, that is the dungeon race. There'll also be an emblem for it that players can get by watching the dungeon race on Twitch, and we can see that one on screen. So certainly looking forward to that, and let us know if you are in the comment section. Otherwise, Bungie is speaking about abilities for Heresy right here, and they tease a new arc verb called Bolt Charge, as well as 3 new aspects and a bunch of balance changes. So Bolt Charge is an arc ability right here, and they say it's a positive stacking buff that you build up on yourself over time. And once you reach the maximum charge, your next ability attack will unleash a devastating bolt of arc lightning. And they say dealing damage with any weapon increases your bolt stack charge. And each time a stack is gained, you gain a chunk of melee energy. Then at 10 stacks, your bolt charge is ready, and LE ability damage, arc or otherwise, will summon the powerful bolt. And they say they've once again woven bolt charge into both arc and prismatic suites. And there's some more details about how this will interact with some of the subclass stuff in just a moment. But they also talk about new aspects. And firstly, Night Stalkers will get On the Prowl, a new void aspect, and entering invisibility marks a nearby target as a priority target for you and your team. Then defeating priority targets creates a weakening cloud of smoke that makes you and allies invisible when passing through it, and when priority targets are defeated, you and nearby allies gain increased weapon reload speed and stability for a short duration. Plus we're granted grenade, melee, and class ability energy. So we can see a clip of that one on the screen. Give us your thoughts below. Next up though, we've got one for Striker Titans, and this is called Storm's Keep. So we can cast our class ability to grant a moderate number of bolt charge stacks to you and nearby allies, and while behind your barricade, you and allies gain stacks of bolt charge over time, and any weapon damage will discharge the maximum stacks of that charge. So obviously trying to make class ability usage more rewarding all around right there. But finally we have Ionic Sentry for Warlocks, and we can defeat targets with arc abilities or weapons to charge up Ionic Sentry, and then activate Grenade to deploy a powerful arc turret which blinds on impact and sends out bolts of lightning that chain to nearby enemies, as well as granting stacks of bolt charge when it defeats enemies. So those look pretty interesting, and it's nice to see some new ones being added. On top of that though, there'll be additional ability tuning in general. So for Hunter Arcstriders, Tempest Strike gets a new effect where killing any jolted target grants a stack of bolt charge, and that sees increased damage against PvE enemies by 57%. On top of that, Disorienting Blow now grants a moderate amount of bolt charge stacks when dealing damage with it, and it also deals significant damage in an area around the target hit, instead of just a single target damage. Plus they've increased the blind AoE from 6 meters to 9.6 meters. Then with Arc Staff, reflecting an attack will grant a stack of bolt charge, and for Ascension, they do note that they're increasing fragment slots to 3 on Arc, and activating Ascension will now activate the effects from the following abilities, so it includes Gambler's Dodge, Marksman's Dodge, and Empowering Dodge, as well as Threaded Spectre. So those sound interesting. Plus there's a change for Threadrunner, and with Ensnaring Slam, activating it will activate the effects from Gambler's Dodge, as well as Marksman's Dodge and Threaded Spectre. Plus they're increasing the clone's PvE damage resistance from 40 to 70%. So we're obviously getting an arc-focused season right here. For Titans though, on all subclasses, Barricade will see increased damage resistance versus combatant splash damage attacks when standing behind the barricade. That'll go from 60% to 80%, plus taunt strength and range will no longer fall off over time. Then with the Juggernaut, they say while the shield is active, players now have splash damage resistance. It's 60% splash damage resistance in PvE and 10% in PvP. But while the shield is active, players have 10% damage resistance versus PvE combatants. Plus, when the Juggernaut shield blocks damage, players are granted a stack of Bolt Charge. Then for Ballistic Slam, sprint time requirement before activation has been significantly reduced. Plus, damage now scales based on distance travelled. And versus PvE enemies, the damage is increased by 30%. And each enemy damaged by it will grant a stack of Bolt Charge, which will go all the way up to the maximum of 10 stacks if you manage to hit 10 targets with a single activation. There's also a bunch of changes for Sentinel, and for Unbreakable, they're increasing the rate that Unbreakable offensive throw charges when blocking damage. They've also increased the maximum damage dealt from the offensive throw by 20%, and increased the health pool of the shield to make it less likely to break when under heavy fire. On top of that though, they're increasing the Void Overshield charge rate when holding the shield, and throw now costs half of a grenade energy charge instead of a full charge. But the Orb of Power creation cooldown is increased from 1 second to 4.5 seconds. But finally, Ward of Dawn now does a weakened pulse when the ward is created. Then we have Consecration for Sunbreakers, and they've reduced the Scorch Wave and Slam Wave damage in PvE by 55%, so that's pretty big. They also add that they suspect they may need to adjust the ignition damage in the future. It finally takes us to the Warlock though, and for Stormcaller and Storm Trance, they're increasing non-champion PvE damage by 20%. Chaos Reach will see non-champion PvE damage increase by 15%, and for Lightning Surge, they've removed the Amplify on cast, but it now grants a stack of Bolt Charge for each enemy hit with the Lightning Surge, and versus PvE enemies the damage is increased by 30%, so those seem fairly significant. For Voidwalkers though, and Handheld Supernova, the Chaos Accelerant Magnetic Grenade variant, they're increasing the total projectile count from 5 to 9, as well as the width of the cone's blast by roughly 2 meters, which is quite significant, and the height of the cone blast by 1 meter. But they are reducing projectile damage in PvE from 20 to 15 per projectile to account for the additional projectiles it's putting out. And so that summarizes the Warlock changes, and next up there are changes that affect all classes. So for Radiant, the damage bonus reduced from 25 to 20% in PvE, and again that affects any class using Radiant, so give us your thoughts. Plus on Frost Armor, they're increasing the damage reduction per stack from 4.5 to 6.25, so at maximum stacks, damage reduction goes from 36 to 50%, which is a PvE only change. Nonetheless, it's a positive for Frost Armor. Then for Arc in general, and Amplified, they say PvE combatants will be less accurate against players while amplified, plus players will have 15% damage resistance against PvE enemies. And for Spark of Discharge, they've added an effect where picking up an Ionic Trace grants a stack of Bolt Charge. And for Spark of Momentum, they've added an effect where sliding over ammo bricks now also grants a stack of Bolt Charge, but they've removed the bespoke melee energy bonus from sliding, since each Bolt Charge stack comes with bonus melee energy. And then how Bolt Charge will interact with some prismatic elements here. For Facet of Hope, it can now activate by Bolt Charge. And with Facet of Purpose, it now grants a stack of Bolt Charge on Orb Pickup when an Arc Super is equipped instead of granting Amplified. And for Facet of Sacrifice, it will be able to be activated by Bolt Charge itself. So those are all the changes coming to abilities in Heresy. Give us your thoughts about them down below. Mostly, they sound pretty interesting, but as always, we'll see once we actually get into the game. Otherwise, Bungie confirmed that the Pastis Prologue quest will start next week, and this is the Bento token event that we've been speaking about a little bit. So it kicks off on January 21st, and they say we can visit the Drifter to pick up quests that will reward a special currency called Bento tokens. And we'll be able to exchange this for some pretty interesting rewards. So we've spoken about this previously, we won't go into masses of detail, but a bunch of event mementos will be available, as well as some artifice armor, even things like Cloud Strike. But for the legendary weapons, they've now confirmed they will indeed come with fixed rolls. So we can see on the Cataphract GL3, there'll be Linear Compensator, Alloy Casings, Envious Assassin, Bait and Switch, and a Velocity Masterwork. For Igneous Hammer, the fixed roll is Flared Magwell, Fluted Barrel, Fragile Focus, and Precision Instrument with a Range Masterwork. Plus there's Horror's Least, which will be Arrowhead Break, Accurized Rounds, Perpetual Motion, Kill Clip, and a Stability Masterwork. Plus they're adding the Riptide as a reward. This wasn't previously listed in the database, but fixed role on this is Arrowhead, Enhanced Battery, Compulsive Reloader, and Chill Clip with the Charge Time Masterwork. So that event finally kicking off next week on the 21st, and if you want a more in-depth look at all of the objectives and the rewards, I'll link a video down below as we go into that in a bunch of detail in a dedicated video. Otherwise, they confirm the winners for the Festival of the Lost Armor vote. So from last week, Titan Slashers got 53% of the vote, the Hunter's Spectre got 57%, and for the Warlock Spectre it was 73%, so that was incredibly popular. And these will be the winning armor sets featured for Festival of the Lost. Although, Bungie did say they plan to create all of the armor sets that they showed last week, and that they'll probably be distributed in subsequent seasons, so at some point we're likely to see all of those pieces. Last couple of things to mention here now that we've covered the bulk of the twit though. Bungie reshared on social media that following the update on Tuesday, they did re-enable the Hunter's Shadow Shot Super in Vesper's Host and the Ballador's Wrathweavers across the game. There was some confusion as they weren't re-enabled immediately after the patch. I guess Bungie takes some time to verify that the patch changes have actually worked, and then re-enable the things, but they now appear to be working. Another little bit of news right here from Destiny 2 team, but they also say this week we've banned a large number of accounts that were breaking our terms of service, either by cheating or through violations of code of conduct, and additionally, they're investigating an exploit involving the use of an external tool that's circumventing our in-game Bungie name filters. We're banning accounts engaging in this conduct and actively working towards a solution to prevent names that break the code of conduct from being exposed to our players. So an interesting one there, some kind of exploit that I assume just lets people use whatever name they want. Slightly unexpected one there, but something to be aware of if you do see anything funky. And of course the fact that Bungie are banning accounts that do it, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, in the TWID, there is mention of Game to Give for the year, which is Bungie's charity initiative, and the Bungie Foundation on X did say, the Los Angeles fires have deeply impacted many lives, leaving communities across LA in need of urgent support. So as part of Game to Give for this year, they're launching a special Guardians for LA t-shirt and emblem, and the proceeds for those will go directly to recovery efforts. Of course, it's absolutely wild what's happened out there, and so Bungie are adding it as a part of the event for this year. Otherwise, the Bungie Foundation, which is what it's for, have various initiatives that help children's health and well-being, as well as disaster relief, inclusion, diversity, and equity. And from January 23rd to February 9th, players will be able to support the Bungie Foundation via the official Tiltify page. Plus, there'll be a bunch of featured streamers for the event, and as always, donations can get certain rewards. So there's the Dark Hero emblem, as well as the Caped Crusader Sparrow and Offset Shader bundle, and that is a sort of cartoon print style shader, as we've spoken about previously. And so all of the rewards we can see here will go live when the event actually starts, again on January 23rd. So if you want to take part in that, I'll link the blog post down below, as that has all the links. So it's certainly cool to get involved with. But for today, guys, that's what we have to speak about in the video. So as always, share your thoughts down in the comment section. If you found this one useful, a rating below really does help us out as well. Otherwise though, cheers for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.